Hi everyone, I'm back again. So I just wanted to do a quick comparison review between the Xperia Z1 and the Xperia M2, which the M2 has just recently come out. As I said in the review video, to challenge the mid-range. It's a quad-core, 1 GB RAM little phone, which punches above its weight in some aspects, but kind of disappoints in others. It's I'd say about on par with the Moto G 4G in terms of what it has to offer. It certainly shows how far Android has come lately and how much you can get for not that much money. The Xperia Z1, is a well-known flagship from Sony, which has been superseded by the Xperia Z2. It's a very premium feeling device still, and they improved the flaps a bit from the Xperia Z. A bit of a fingerprint magnet, but I think most people won't complain from the look of the device, even if it is a bit unwieldy at 5 inches. They do both look very similar, it has to be said. The button arrangements are very similar. Just the general language of both devices is quite similar. However, the Z1 does have a more obviously heavier feel to it and is a bit less comfortable in the hand. You can easily get around the screen with the M2 in one hand, but a bit of hand gymnastics are required for the Z1. On the back, you do have a slightly different camera placement, and the camera on the Z1 is a 21 megapixel G lens, whereas it's just an 8 megapixel RS sensor on the Xperia M2. So you'd think that the picture quality on the Z1 would be a lot better. So when you do turn on both devices, you are greeted with slightly different pixel densities, in that the Z1 is a full HD triluminous display with Bravia reality technology, and the Sony M2 is either a QHD or a 720p, I'm not quite sure, display. I think it does also have the Bravia technology, or maybe it doesn't. No, I don't think it does actually. So no Bravia technology on the M2. So in terms of head-on viewing, you can certainly notice that the screen on the M2 is a slight less quality than the Z1, but I think that what's surprising is that when you look at them from the sides, the M2 seems to be that little bit better than the Z1, and that's just in my opinion. I'm not sure if everyone else would agree with that, but I think that the Z1 has a very disappointing viewing angles looking at it from the sides, and I think that it was slightly improved on the M2. Although it's still a TFT panel, which is quite bizarre, but I think that's obviously something to bear in mind, that that aspect of the M2 is a little bit better. But in terms of daylight viewability, they're both very decent, and the large battery capacities in them allow you to bump up the brightness to allay any viewing angle issues. In regards to the specifications, the Sony Z1 is obviously going to blow the Sony M2 out of the water still, because it's still got fantastic specifications. So, in terms of raw performance, the 2 gig RAM, the Snapdragon 800 should beat the M2 in most things. But we can just have a quick look at how both of them perform against each other. If I go into quadrant on both of them, I expect the Z1 to power ahead here, way past the Snapdragon 400 in the M2. So the Z1 is already done, and the M2 lagging behind a bit, which is to be expected, I guess. But it's finished now. So as you can see, the Z1 is well up there with 17614. It's running Android KitKat as well, which means that it's slightly better than it was when it was on an older version of Android. On the M2, it's bottomed out at about 8,350. So obviously, it's still a good score compared to some of the older handsets, but in terms of raw performance, then you're going to be getting that with the Z1 still. I think day to day in general tasks, I haven't really noticed that much of a difference, if I'm to be honest. If I go to, for example, opening up certain apps at the same time, for example, eBay, they both open up relatively the same speed. If you just try and open up the cameras on both of them. Okay, probably didn't hit the camera with the Z1. Let's try that again. Let's get rid of the camera on that. So it's still the M2 seems to open up the camera slightly quicker. If we try and open up Facebook on both of them. Yeah, so Facebook obviously opens up quite a bit quicker on the Z1. Play Store. So let's try that again. Virtually the same. How about switching off the devices at the same time? M2 seems to win there. How about booting up at the same time? Wow, M2's really taking the lead a bit here. And it looks like the M2's available. Yeah, so ignore all that rubbish. But as you could see there, it seems that the M2 boots up quicker. Just wonder if there's anything else. How about map performance on both devices? Probably a bit difficult to see with the Z1 because of the viewing angles, but as you can see, sometimes I wish I could have 4 arms and I'd be able to pinch to zoom, but about comparable for that. So in general, I think that you know, the performance is roughly equal on most things, but as you could see, for some reason the M2 seems to do things like booting up and shutting down that little bit quicker, which is quite strange, but yeah. I think in terms of sound quality, the Z1 has slightly more powerful speaker as well. We can just have a look at that. So this is the speaker on the M2. So as you can hear, that was quite loud, but still a bit lacking compared to some other handsets. I think the Moto G and the Moto X is a lot louder and clearer. Try the Z1. So it's a bit louder in my opinion. I don't know if you can hear that on through the video, but in my opinion it does sound a bit louder on the Z1. So I think the quality of the speaker is slightly better. So I think if you're needing a device which has a slightly better speaker, if you listen to music just on the fly now and again, then the Z1's definitely the option to consider. In regards to battery life, if I'm to be absolutely honest, I found them roughly comparable, even though the battery in the Z1 is a 3000 mAh and the M2 has I think it's a 2300 mAh. So I think that would be probably due to the slightly smaller screen, the less powerful processor and more efficient processor in the M2. But they're both solid battery performers. You're not going to have any issues with these devices, and they both come with stamina mode, so you can prolong the standby time quite a lot. In regards to storage, the storage on the Z1 comes with a slightly more reasonable 16 gigs, whereas the Sony M2 only comes with 8 gigs, which could fill up very fast. Particularly if you do things like save maps to your device and downloading a lot of apps. However, you do get micro SD with both of them, so that's a saving grace. So the Z1, it has to be mentioned as well, does come with the ability to connect to a charging dock, which is very useful through these connectors, so you don't have to keep reaching into the flaps, which is very annoying. But the flaps do make the device waterproof, which is a big bonus compared to the M2, which doesn't have that ability. So yeah, and obviously we can't forget to talk about the camera, which is very different on both devices. However, the core software on both of them is roughly comparable. As you can see, you can select a whole load of different modes which are very similar. On the M2 it's called picture effect, on the Z1 it's called creative effect. You got your sweep panorama, you've got time shift burst on the Z1, which allows you to find the best photo from burst images. You can take off superior auto on both of them. However, when you do that on the M2, it seems to close down the camera, which is very annoying. But then when you do open it back up again, you can access more settings, which is always nice. And on the Z1 you can go up to 20 megapixels, which is obviously very nice for very high detailed shots. You do get your HDR and things like that though on the M2, so you're not missing out. And the image stabilization as well. So I think that just because you're paying less for the M2, the camera experience is still decent. It's not completely cut down, but I think that in terms of raw performance, the Z1 is the phone to get, especially in low light where the M2 tends to struggle a lot, whereas the Z1 only struggles a bit. Video recording again on the Z1 is a lot better than the M2, which is very mediocre. In regards to the GPS connectivity, we can have a look at that. It looks like to me that the Z1 seems to be able to pick up more GPS, although I don't really know what's going on, if I'm to be absolutely honest. I think that from the looks of it, it looks like the Z1 is doing better, but maybe you know a bit more about it and can tell me that it's actually the M2 doing better. But that's what I get from it, that the Z1 seems to be getting more GPS signals here. It says 16 in use, whereas only 10 in use on the M2. So I think that GPS performance is going to be stronger on the Z1. In terms of the ability to pull down data using Wi-Fi, we can check that out as well. They're both connected to my crappy Sky service, which is supposed to be 10 megabytes, but rarely goes past 5 megabytes. But as you can see, it looks like the Z1 is managing to bully more data down. And it seems to be also pushing more data up. However, the ping is slightly better on the M2, but I don't trust one test, so let's just try it again. I have found the Wi-Fi to be very stable on the M2 wherever I am in the house. I can't say the same, however, for the Moto G, which seems to be a bit weak in regards to Wi-Fi. Again, the ping on the M2 seems to be a bit lower. and it seems to have done better on the download this time, whereas the Z1 seems to be doing better on the upload again. So kind of mixed results there. I think in general they're both very comparable. There's no clear winner for the Wi-Fi strength or connectivity. Another thing to remember, obviously, is that when you're buying a Sony device, you get a whole load of Sony stuff, and you will get that on both of them. Just be aware of that. You do get some nice stuff that allows you to download music and videos from Sony Unlimited, as well as on the Z1 I think you can use it as a remote control. I don't think you have that on the M2 unfortunately, but it does have a lot of the other Sony stuff. It does run Android 4.3 as well, so slightly behind there. But day to day you're not going to notice too much of a difference. So yeah, I think that they're both, excellent devices in their own respects. But I think if you have more cash to burn, then it's worthwhile getting the Z1. I think I've seen it come down in price now to about 350 odd quid. That's because the Z2 obviously coming out, whereas the M2 can be picked up for about 200 quid. And is probably more suitable for someone who's looking for something a bit more budget, and probably wants to spend that extra £100 on something else like a tablet. So I hope that you found the video informative, and if you did, please like it and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.